So welcome Tracie to the show, Fernando Flores as always, and so what are the things? So some of the questions, Tracie, may be silly or whatever. We won't. I mean, we're gonna. I'm not nothing to be offensive.
No, they're good.
Hopefully, and Fernando has a really creative sense of humor. He's one of my favorite funny guys, quite honestly. And he cracks me up every time I see him. and I mean your material, not every time I see you, okay? Don't take it, because nowadays you say, well, what do you mean when you see me?
Oh, okay.
Cancel culture, bro. You can't even say a damn thing anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But Fernando, this is Tracie's your friend. Introduce her.
All right, everybody. Well, everyone listening to the podcast, thank you for listening to the Donkey Show, eldonkeyshow with Cisco and myself. On the show today, we have Dr. Delgado. She is a virologist, or is it virologist? How do you pronounce that, Dr. Delgado?
I mean, you could say it either way. It's like tomato. I say virologist, but you can also say virologist. I mean, floats your boat.
How ironic that she's in Seattle and, oh no, never mind. I was going to say, wasn't one of Pearl Jam's albums named Virology, but it was Vitology. Never mind. I was about to give it. Yeah, Vitology. It was Vitology. I was going to say, that would have been cool if their album would have been named Virology.
Close, but kind of not close.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting,
So, if you don't mind, Dr.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you don't mind, Dr. Delgado, give us a little bit of your educational background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so born and raised in Bell, California, in LA.
Hey,
so, yeah,
Southeast LA, represent.
Definitely.
I grew up in HP, so.
Oh man, we were rivals. I don't know about that. We may have to get off the show now. I'm just kidding. But I grew up in the city of Bell. Ended up getting into UCLA and went through college, 4 years of college. Did different kinds of science research. Specifically, I studied cancer and I studied herpes viruses.
Oh.
And then, so we could talk about either. And I ended up getting my degree in microbiology. So from UCLA, and then I decided I wanted to get a PhD. So on to Seattle, Washington I went. And here I got my PhD in microbiology, but the specialty continued to be herpes viruses, and specifically ones that cause cancer. But we could talk about cancer, we could talk about herpes, we could talk about both, we could talk about other things. But that's pretty much what my educational background was. And then ever since then, I ended up being a professor after I graduated. So I'm a biology professor.
Really? What school?
I'm at Seattle Pacific University here in Seattle.
Okay. Because I know there's a few different schools out there, so that's why I've heard of a couple, because I coach high school football. I do comedy, so I trying to get my kids into these schools. You know what I mean? Like I tell them, hey, a degree is a degree. It don't matter if it's Division 3, Division 6, whatever. If they're gonna give you a scholarship, take it, because educations are expensive, and it's better to come out with zero debt than to come out with all this debt, because then you're working your first 5 to 10 years to pay it off.
Definitely. Yeah, you got to take advantage of whatever opportunity comes your way.
So a lot of kids don't understand that, sports and clubs and community service is just as important as their education, when nowadays, because it's so competitive, the universities and stuff, especially to get a free education. So that's why I encourage them I go, dude, just join anything. I don't care what you got to do, but be active. Don't just get straight A's and think, oh, with my straight A's, I'm going to know that. You know how many kids get straight A's across the country?
Yeah, I always tell people, when you're applying to college or graduate schools, they're like, what makes you special?
Exactly.
Whatever, all these other people are going to have those same grades. So what makes you special versus, why should I pick you if I was an admissions person versus someone else?
Well, that's what makes me special, is I didn't finish. I went to Cal State Long Beach. Yeah. Women, man, women. Luckily, it wasn't herpes or cancer.
Yeah, herpes is everywhere. 1 in 5 people, man.
Luckily, well, we all have it. I mean, I've had the cold sore. I've had the cold sore. Have you ever had one, Fernando?
I'm gonna plead the fifth. Plead the fifth on that one.
I've never had to go in to get my privates checked. I don't know if that's what they check or your blood, but I've had the lip when I'm like, oh man.
You could get a blood test. I mean, if you don't want to get that invasive, you can get a blood test.
It feels like you're carrying like a 30-pound weight on your lip.
So-
It's like, Go ahead, Fern.
Is it because everyone's staring at it? Is that what it is? Or is it because you actually, feel something like weighing you down?
It's because you've been picking at it, and they tell you don't pick at it, and then it starts getting, I've noticed that if you don't mess with it, it just goes away. But of course, where they're going, you're getting dirty saliva into it and all that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I never had a cold sore before. I actually tested negative, which is crazy because I'm like the herpes person and I have no herpes.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
So you're not you're 1 in 4 or whatever.
So
well, actually, the herpes simplex, the one that causes the cold sores, is actually like 7 in 10. The one that causes genital herpes is 1 in 5.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, that's good to know. I'm 70% of the population, so I'm not as special. We're not as special, Fernando. We're 70% of the population. She's 30%, so that's special right there.
There you go.
That's why she's got a doctorate's degree.
So, that's right. So, Dr. Delgado, you said something earlier when you were talking about your research and education. You said something about there are herpes viruses that cause cancer. Did I hear that right?
That is correct.
Wow. Now, what kind of cancer are we talking about?
Lymphoma is one example. So if we're sticking to the herpes viruses for just a second, the same herpes virus that causes mono can cause Burkitt's lymphoma in a small percentage of individuals. So there's other type of viruses that cause cancer. Probably most common, you might have heard of cervical cancer, human papilloma. There's a vaccine for that, which people should get, because it basically decreases your chances of cancer, or at least cervical cancer, by like 90%. So, and it's effective and good.
And what is the correlation? Like how is it determined? Like how does herpes become cancer? How does that work? Like, I'm sure it's probably a long process and whatever, but that's interesting. Wow. I mean, when people think of cancer, they think, okay, you get cancer. They don't think one thing leads to another. I've heard of lymphomatic cancer. I heard because, what is it? Our lymphs get clogged or something, or what?
It's more of like your immune system cells that are in your lymph. So those become cancerous because they replicate out of control, and then they take over the body and they replicate everywhere, and then it causes severe disease and organ failure and then deaths.
Oh. Damn. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the question of like what causes cancer, that's what I'm trying to find out. That's my research lab, is trying to figure out like how is it that these viruses, specifically herpes viruses, cause cancer. And so, cancer has a lot of different things that occur.
Yeah.
And, to cause cancer, like my specialty is an increase in sugar and fat metabolism.
Yeah.
Like cancer cells, they're sugar greedy. Like they'll eat sugar quick. They'll like take in fat and like make fat real quick, mainly because they're trying to grow, right? Like if think about it, like if you wanted to multiply yourself as a grown man, you need to eat more food and you need all the energy and fuel to make more of yourself. So in the same way, cancer cells need to do that. And there's things like immortality and other things, but that's just like one example of what a cancer cell has to do in order to become cancer.
So are you saying like sugar and extremely starchy foods are the nutrition for cancer? Is that what they feed off of?
Yeah, they feed off of sugar, definitely. Like all cancer cells need to have increased metabolism in sugar. Now, in the same aspect, like all your cells need sugar. They're just greedy with it. So like if you have certain sugar in your blood, who's going to take the most of it is going to be cancer cells. I don't know if you ever heard of people who got cancer scans. Like they say, oh, I'm going to go get a cancer scan and see if I still have cancer or cancer-free. They actually give them a radioactive kind of labeled sugar. Ooh. And they inject it in their veins and they see what areas of the body take in the most sugar and like lights up like the 4th of July. And you could be like, wow, that's where the cancer is, because wherever that labeled sugar accumulates, that's the cancer greedy cells eating that sugar. So yeah, sugar metabolism is super big. That's what I do my research on. But also for viruses, viruses are trying to fend for themselves, right? They're not even freaking alive, but they somehow can multiply and go from host to host. And so their goal is to just make more of themselves. So you got to think of like a cell, like a house replicating itself. That's what cells are doing. Cancer cells do that. What virus does is invades your house, takes all your food and all the materials that you would have done to build your own house, and then builds more of itself, and then makes like 1,000 more and takes off, and then infects new houses or like robs new houses.
Damn.
So that's basically what a virus is doing. And it's trying to like, and part of the process, it's more like, get me more food because I need to make more virus. So it's kind of like a side effect of causing cancer, like in some aspect, because it's telling like, as it invades your house, it's like, I know you have a lot of food here, but I need more. So ramp up your metabolism and eat more sugar, but I'm going to use it for me to make more of me instead of, but then sometimes the cell as like a bystander, like gets crazy and starts to divide more because of that. And that's part of the process of becoming cancer from virus infections.
So we're going to put this to rest today. Okay. So does 7-Up with lemon and Vicks Vapor Rub control cancer?
I mean, I wish it did. I wish that was the end of it, because then,
right?
I mean, I would
I'm sure your abuelita used to toma till 7, mija.
I know, my abuelita's going to be really upset if I say no. But, but yeah, I mean, not going to happen.
Un té de canela. Un té de canela.
I tell people, like, the placebo effect, like mental, like positive thoughts, goes a long way. So,
it does.
So if you need the Vicks, Vapor Rub or whatever you need to make you feel more positive about your situation, just do it. It's not gonna hurt you. Just take your drugs and everything else that you need to take too.
So,
but stay positive. Like, that's gonna be the biggest aspect. You do what you need to do to make you feel good.
I have a question regarding herd immunity. We've heard that phrase a lot, especially lately with the COVID-19 thing going on and all that stuff. So, and everyone's sure of it, that eventually we're going to reach herd immunity when it comes to COVID-19. But how come there is no herd immunity, say, for example, for herpes or other viruses? And are we certain that it's going to work for COVID-19?
Hold on real quick. What is herb immunity? What, taking herbs?
I know he's saying herd immunity.
Is it
like
herb?
A herd. Like a herd, like a pack of animals.
Oh,
like
herd. Herd. I think you said herb. Like herb. I thought like you were saying like we're gonna take some like some 7 blossoms or something, and then it's herd immunity.
Herd immunity, like a herd of animals, like pack. So basically, like herd immunity. Now I'm gonna think like herb. Watch, I'm gonna say herb at one of these.
I know, right?
Herd immunity is basically the concept of that if a virus is spreading rapidly enough, that everybody will get infected, and then you cannot get infected again. So, like, for example, like if I have a house of 10 people and 9 of the people are infected, they're actually not going to be able to spread the virus anymore because they've already been infected and they recovered. So they like gain immunity. And so if you're hanging out, like if I had 9 people who had COVID-19, for example, or another virus, and then there was one person who didn't, like the 9 people that are surrounding that one person may be able to basically shield the person who hasn't been infected, mainly because they can't get infected again, like the people who had immunity. But anyway, so the whole concept is, if there's enough people who get the virus, then it doesn't spread anymore. That's assuming that the virus is not mutating, which most viruses do. I want to say you might have heard of people saying the cold came into my house and then 3 months later it came back again, a second round and a third round passed person to person, and then it changed and then you're back again. So it depends on the virus. Some viruses don't change much. Some viruses do. Some viruses it's easier to make vaccines for. Other viruses is not. So here, herd immunity would be the virus. Like, how do you get quick herd immunity? Either the virus is spreading quickly and very infectious, right? Some viruses are very infectious and other ones not. For example, the measles, you guys know we have a vaccine for the measles, right? If you have someone who goes into a movie theater, this is one of my virology professors I had in grad school told me. He's like, you go into a movie theater, one person has the measles, 50 people don't have the measles, or 100 people don't have the measles. That one person with the measles goes into the movie theater during infectious time, half of the people would be infected by the time they leave.
Jeez.
And get the measles, which is why we have vaccines for the measles. There are some that are more serious and cause more serious disease. Other ones, you need to be closer in proximity, or you need to be touching people or licking people or whatever, whatever ends up happening. So, it just depends, or kissing or whatever. And so, like depending on like the type of contact that you need in order for the actual infection to happen. And so with COVID-19, yeah, I mean, we could let it roll and not social distance and not worry about stuff. But what's the consequence? The consequence is hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. So are you willing to take that chance? You know? Well, not chance. It will happen, right? So that's kind of what will happen there, right?
Can we pick who dies?
No, if only if it was that way. Can't quite do that.
You're gonna get it, and you're gonna get it. No,
yeah, I mean, it just depends on like exposure and who's going out into not social distancing and going to big parties and stuff. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But then other viruses, like they don't spread that much or that easily. So, like, with certain STDs, like you have to have sexual contact and and multiple partners and for some people, like they don't do that, and some people they do. It just depends on like what's going on at that point of their life stage, right? So you won't get herd immunity. You're not going to have that much widespread. And some viruses we have vaccines for, so we don't get herd immunity. Like polio was killing tons of people, back in the days, and now we have a vaccine, and people don't have to have machines breathing for them. Like you might have heard iron lungs that literally pumped their lungs so that they lived. Not everybody had that severe of symptoms, but depends. So herd immunity can either come through vaccination, enough people get immunity where the virus stops spreading, or it can happen through natural infection. Depending on how fast natural infection depends on the virus. Some happen quick, some happen not. COVID-19 can make a quick natural infection if we let it. But again, downside, people die.
Now, let me ask a quick question. Could there be some people who coronavirus or COVID doesn't affect at all? Like, I mean, because we've got the asymptomatic. Because, like, I feel like I've been exposed. I've gone out and stuff. I wear my mask or whatever. But they, like they say, the mask is not for the people who don't have it. It's for the people who do have it, for them not to spread it. It's people think, if I wear my mask, I won't get it. No, dude, you're gonna get it if the person who has it is not wearing a mask. Then you're screwed.
You gotta give them those evil eyes and be like, look, you need to stay away from me, Satan.
Oh, you know how it is. You go to the store. Hey, you go to El Super and you achoo. You're like, oh man. You're looking at that person. They're sweating, and you're like, what the hell? What are you doing out of the house, man? Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I was looking at I came upon this article of this doctor. It was on the science, and I didn't know. I like to look up like history stuff and information, and it was interesting that the cold virus was barely discovered like in '66, man. Like that's not. I mean, it's a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. So imagine before '66, people didn't even know what a cold was.
Yeah, and truthfully, the age of like microbiology and antibiotics has been within like the last 100 years or so. Like we didn't have antibiotics before. People just died. You got sick, you died.
Now, could there be confusion between, like, I'm looking at SARS COVID, MERS COVID, and then this COVID-19? Because when people say, "Oh, I came up positive," could it be they got SARS? And then they get it again. They're like, "Oh, I got it twice." No, you had SARS the first time. Now you got COVID-19, or you had MERS. Now you have COVID-19. I mean, because is there a distinction in the testing?
There is so when people go get a COVID test, I would tell you, just backtrack.
I got tested.
I got tested. It sucks. Like it's horrible. And so they basically like stick this big thing up to your brain or whatever and twist it like a million times, and then you're supposed to like stay still. And they test the virus based off of a technique called PCR, and it basically is looking at like a specific genetic code that's unique to the SARS-CoV-2, which is the COVID-19 we have now, compared to the other coronaviruses. So it's very specific.
Okay.
So when you get tested, if you say you're positive, you are positive for the current virus. But back to your old question about like, well, what if I did have like, SARS or MERS? Just in general, they have a super high death rate. Like if you got SARS or MERS, you will probably know it, and you might like 1 in 3 chance be dead right now.
Oh, wow.
Like it is super serious. Yeah. So, and it actually wasn't as infectious. Like it doesn't spread as much. So the people who were getting it were like getting it and dying, or like severe illness, and weren't really spreading it to others. So like every virus has like a death rate, like severity, and it has a spreadability rate. So when you have a high spreadability rate and a high death rate, that's when you're like really concerned. Does that make sense? Like if you have a low spreadability or low, like doesn't really hurt you, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. So you know, that's why we don't have vaccines for like normal colds, because like you're going to get the sniffles. You won't die from that. You'll die from the flu.
Yeah.
Some people will, you know, so they get vaccines for that. But we didn't really care to make vaccines for coronaviruses before because it wasn't spreading and, you know, to enough people, and it wasn't that severe until now, until we have this unique strain. And so, I mean, it is possible that there are some people who have pre-existing immunity, and I may be one of them as well. Who knows? I have there's some hypotheses that scientists have looked at in some scientific evidence. For example, my husband got COVID-19 back early in March. Pretty mild. It was one of those times where it was still new. We're just like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? He lost his taste and smell. You know, that when you start seeing those articles pop up and be like, oh, you know, you can't taste, you can't smell. Yeah. Like, you know, I knew when the bacon was burning and he didn't smell it, that something was wrong. Like, you know, he did not smell the bacon burning, and like our dog like laying some big farts out there. So we're just like, I was like, and he has sensitive smell. So I'm like, something's wrong. Like, you know, I mean, he mentioned like his smell was weird, different. And then we're just like, wow, like something weird happened. Then he got tested, and we were not social distancing, you know, between my husband and my son, my 5-year-old now. He was 4 at the time, and we're like, we had to have gotten it. Like at this point, you know, he was most infectious days prior to the testing, and we didn't get it. And that was really weird. And I always thought, like, how is that possible that me and my son didn't get it? And
did you drink 7-Up that week?
I should have. I wish. I mean, I could have been like, this was why.
No, era squirt, abuelita, era squirt.
Yeah, maybe it was just on my cafecitos. But
you know, me too. My wife back in November, she got sick to the point where she was crying in the bathroom, and I can't smell, I can't taste, and she's at aches and pains. This is in November. This is before they said, but they don't know when we first got contacted. They have no idea what happened. She works at a retail store. You know, she works as a cashier. She works in all that. So she's exposed to lots of people. You know, I mean, I don't know how many Mexicanos be traveling to China or whatever, to Wuhan, to go para comprar tripa, you know, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. But I don't know. But that was a weird. She says, I had never gotten sick like this before. And I remember her saying it back then, sitting in the bathroom, crying, like, I'm dying. She was like, I'm dying. I can't smell. Like I said, replay. I can't smell. I can't taste. My bones hurt. I lay down. I can't, you know, same thing. My brother got it. He works in the medical field. My younger brother, he got it. And he's like, man, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stand. I couldn't do anything. But he got over it. Me, I feel like, and my kids, I feel like we've been exposed or something, but we just haven't, or we got it and we didn't know or something. But honestly, we've stayed kind of quarantined. Like I just go for necessary stuff. Yeah. I mean, it sucked I've gone to the beach the last week or so because I was like, man, enough is enough. I can't, but we socially distance. Well, the good thing
is if you're outdoors, that's the best place because the virus dilutes itself. It's not enough to like really infect you. So if you can stay like 6 feet or more from people outdoors, that's the best place to be. So what about when Seattle, when it gets all cold over here, like that's not gonna be hard because you can't really just be hanging outside when it's raining.
Well, you guys, that's the thing about Seattle, man. That's where it first hit, correct?
Yeah, we were the
But then again, you guys have more access to Bill Gates, who seems to know everything about all viruses, about vaccines. Did you hear about the latest?
Money from him.
Yeah, the latest about the vaccine, the mosquito. Supposedly. They're putting, this is the latest thing. I just read an article about it where they take these mosquitoes and through what kind of operation, they put the vaccine in the mosquito, then it flies around and injects you with it.
Wow, I've never heard. I'd have to read about that. That's interesting. I mean, it would make sense, especially for certain vaccinations like malaria and things like that. Yeah. I mean, he's big on malaria research. He's big on like funding research, but we actually have something even better than Bill Gates. We have like a rock star virology department at the University of Washington.
Really?
When like the whole COVID thing went down, and there was kind of like the CDC was messing up with like their test. University of Washington was like quietly making their own test and giving them out and testing them without permission because they were not like approved for that.
Yeah.
And they basically were able to track the spread of the virus by themselves without like everything else and get ahead of the game. And then even they have a study here for the Seattle flu where like they take no samples from everybody who has like the flu. So this could have happened with like your wife or someone like, in his example, if she was here, every person who comes with the flu, they swab it, they save it. They went back like to the samples from January and February that they saved and tested them for COVID because they said, oh, they were not flu positive. And they found out, oh, like those samples we took like 2 months ago, those were actually COVID positive. So they were able to have all this. Then they collaborated with the Seattle flu study with University of Washington to virology department to like get all the data pieced together to kind of track where the virus migrates, kind of like a tree or a trail. You can see like where it first started and how it changed and changed a little bit by little bit into like this tree of a web of all the different kind of variations of the virus we have now.
Damn, that's
yeah.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like playing like, crime scene investigator, but with viruses, you're trying to like play detective and all this stuff.
And see, that's the thing. So I've been curious, like when something is discovered, is there like a bulletin board or something that everybody goes out, hey, careful with this new virus? Like, how do you get it out there to like other researchers around the world or whatnot? Is there like a common communication, platform? I don't know. How would you describe it?
Yeah. So like basically like if I wanted to work on this virus, how do I get it to my lab? Or like materials?
No.
What do you mean?
No, like say a disease is discovered right now in Seattle. Mm-hmm. How do you get out to the world? Like, hey, be careful. We just discovered this virus. How does that get out? Like right away?
Usually one of the fastest communications is Twitter.
So
like
Twitter.
Scientific Twitter. I mean, people use Twitter for everything.
Yeah.
But like one of the fastest ways people like, different professors and stuff would just like make some things. I mean, the media will come, but then normally like how they swing it just can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
Depending on like what's, like the facts are there, but they're kind of like hard to understand. So, so you do that through that. I mean, you can always do through email, but I feel like a lot of the times if you want to like quickly say like there's an outbreak, it's just the same thing. Like when someone's like, there was a fire or something, like you could either do it through Facebook, through social media, or you could do it through Instagram or Twitter or whatever people use as a quick way to disseminate into your community. And so that's kind of how they would kind of do the same with science. At least that I've experienced. All the new papers that come out about COVID I've looked at them through Twitter, and like the people publishing them, like the big shot scientists are pushing them through Twitter.
Interesting. So one of the things I've always wondered about, for example, what made them look for COVID-19 in the first place? You know what I mean? Like the first few people in Wuhan that got sick, what made some scientists think, let me see if they're getting sick with something different? I mean, because if somebody was to come up to me, if I'm a doctor, and somebody was to come up and they obviously have some kind of respiratory illness, I'm thinking they have the flu or something like that, right? So what made someone look for COVID-19 in the first place? What gave them that drive to check to see if it was something different?
Really quick. Well, wasn't it at the beginning? Weren't they saying that it was an upper respiratory infection, like when they didn't know it was coronavirus?
They knew it was, they were doing chest x-rays, and they can see, through the chest x-rays that there was some kind of infection or some sort of blockage of not being able to breathe correctly, right? Or fluid or inflammation and other things. So yeah, they didn't know in the beginning, but I will say anticipation. Outbreaks happen a lot, and from particular animals are more popular in particular parts of the country. So they already had noticed that there were bats that were infected with new coronaviruses that were not present before, because the scientists are constantly testing these animals where the virus jumps from animal to human. So they were actually doing tests on these bats, and they were saying, hey, there's some coronaviruses that we haven't seen before, and let's, keep an eye. You got to keep an eye on these animals and say, if it jumps to humans, that's like something completely new your body hasn't seen before, right? It's kind of like if you all is humans, and all of a sudden you see an alien, you don't even know how to fight it. Like you don't know the strategy, like you have to learn everything again. That's how your immune system is, right? Your immune system learns how to combat infections, just like you learn a strategy, when you go to war or whatever it may be, you learn the enemy and how to fight it. And then all of a sudden something comes out of, right field, and it's something you've never seen before. That's what happens when viruses jump from animals to humans. And those cause epidemics and pandemics, which are very dangerous because our bodies have not seen them before. So we don't know how to fight back. And that's why it takes advantage of our body quicker and harder than normal. So this is common with the flu. No matter her like swine flu, happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, people were like, we know that this was happening, avian bird flu, like that happens with a lot with people who handle a lot of chickens, which happens a lot in China and other places. SARS, the same thing with birds. And so it's like birds, bats are like bad news, like in some ways, because a lot of these respiratory infections are like incubating and replicating in them. And then if the virus mutates enough to leave the bat or chicken and infect you, that could be severe. But then there's another key: go human to human. So there's two steps: animal to human. Normally that's the end. That's what happened a lot with earlier, with kind of the ones like bird flu or SARS, kind of like the original SARS, very similar to that. But then human to human, which with SARS was very low, which is why it didn't cause a huge pandemic like the way we saw before, right? Because it was slow, because it was hard to go human to human. But this one's easy, like real easy. So, and then it just affects people differently, depending on, what's happening with, your immunity.
So is it from eating bats or just being exposed to the bats?
Both. I mean, it could happen both. It just depends, if you were handling an animal that had rabies and it was dead, like you can get it from eating it, you can get it from handling it. You touch your eyes, you touch your face, you touch your mouth, you don't wash your hands. So you can get it through multiple mechanisms.
So how correct is this? What do you call it? How would I say it? God dang, understanding. I don't know, for lack of a better term. I read this article. I think I understood it, but correct me. So I read where the coronavirus attacked red blood cells, which red blood cells carry oxygen to the rest of the body, and that's why you felt the suffocation. And in my mind, it makes sense. Your head would start hurting because you're not getting the adequate amount of oxygen to your brain, and your body aches. Lack of oxygen. Is that what happened? Does it attack the red blood cells in the body?
It is attacking a lot of things.
So the white cells as well?
So the science is still out there. I mean, this virus is acting a little bit different than traditional coronaviruses. Like, it's not only attacking your lungs, it's causing blood clots, it's causing heart failure, it's causing, people to have respiratory, distress for months. There's people who have COVID for like 2 months, 3 months, and like not getting better, and people who get better like in 2 days. Like, it's just, there's the kids who are getting like the inflammatory rash, and having issues, little kids. And then, there's so many things that we're still learning about it. Heart failure, your heart is enlarging, becoming larger, trying to pump the blood better. A lot of it originally is through your lungs. Like, you're not able to breathe. It affects like kind of these balloon like shaped things called alveoli, which are found inside of your lungs that help to expand. And if your balloons are not able to fully expand, and there's inflammation and other things like that, it causes your body to attack, your own lungs, and you can't breathe. And so, there's so many things this virus is doing now. It's not doing it to everybody. For some people, it's doing this, and other people it's doing that. Kind of the ones that we're paying most attention are shortness of breath. But what are the long-term, things that are going to happen? People say like you should be taking baby aspirin to prevent those those blood clots, just in case, to break them down, because those blood cells are clumping up and can clog your arteries and cause death, through heart attack in the future. So you just don't know. So this is just all these things that we have to just take into consideration as we, investigate and learn more about this virus.
I didn't even hear anything about the blood clots. Jeez. Now I'm going to be worried about that. You know what I mean? Like, how many times?
I know there's so much. It's also so scary. I know. It's just,
how many times have you laid there in bed and go, wait a minute, man, I'm feeling shortness of breath here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, like the first couple of weeks, I thought I had shortness of breath. I thought I had muscle aches. I thought it was like my joints, man. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I carried like 38 boxes yesterday, maybe that's.
I know we're all second guessing everything, like every cough, and absolutely. I have like a dry cough, like a reflex. Yeah. And so now I'm just like, oh my gosh, don't cough, and I'm like choking on myself because like I cough because I have COVID. So everybody's just like trying to contain themselves. Like,
and then I have these like coughs that I think that I provoke them myself. I don't even think I have to cough, but I'm like. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I think, well, I shouldn't hold it, but damn, do I have COVID? Like stupid little, I'm a big I'm a big mental thing. Like, I'm a big dude. Like, I think that if you fix in your mind that you're gonna die, you're gonna die. But if you fix in your mind, like, I'm gonna get through this, I think the mind, like they say, the mind is the temple, and it just sends the vibes through your body. I know that that's not something you studied or whatever, but
no, that's why you take your Vicks vapor rub.
Exactly.
You take your 7-Up with, what was it, Sprite with limon? Or
Sprite with limon or 7-Up with pero no de dieta porque no sirve.
That doesn't work. Yeah.
No, or like we got into meditation, my wife and I, sitting there meditating, like trying to, so that your body heals itself. Like they say fasting. They say fasting, now they say like, everybody's into the whole intermittent fasting and all that, but they, even like those fasts, they say that gives your body a chance to regenerate cells and all that. And that, before they used to tell us, no, you got to eat 3 times a day, or you got to eat, then it was, you got to eat 5 times a day. Now it's like, oh, eat once, or, whatnot. And, it's just, if you sit there and listen to everybody, you got to do what, you got to be you. You got to do what makes you feel good. Like, what makes you have positive thoughts. Yeah, I think medicine is not a perfect science, because like my wife would go to the doctor because she'd have this pain or whatever, and I go, look, I'm gonna tell you something. If you go to 10 doctors, chances are you're gonna get 10 different opinions. I'm telling you. Because every doctor like lots of doctors learn differently from different schools of medicine. And I told her, why do you think there's so many conflicting articles, even in medical journals? You'll have one doctor, and it's just because their mind is a proponent of such, therapies or type of medicine. And then this doctor is a proponent of this one, and they're going to do whatever it takes to say, no, that guy's full of it, or that person's full of it. And this is why, and if they're not wrong, neither of them's wrong. Yeah. That's just what they believe, and that's what they study. I go, no one, if somebody had the answers, everybody would be healed, man. I go, everybody would be healed. But, I tell my wife, when you go to the doctor and they say, well, we're going to try this, they're not telling you this is for sure 100% going to fix you. They say, we're going to try this because the symptoms you have are related to like 8,000 different, illnesses or whatever, or conditions. I go, so you can't, if you say I have shortness of breath, all right, well, they have to test this, they have to test that, they have to check this. Now add coronavirus to that. Maybe you had asthma,
Yeah. My dry cough.
Crazily.
Allergy, maybe some, maybe it's asthma, maybe it's allergies, maybe it's reflux. You just don't know what that dry cough is. My
son when he was younger, used to get asthma as a result of his allergies. I noticed that when it was allergy season, and like the what do you call it, what's the stuff from the plants, the pollen or whatever, he would just he'd start getting that little he doesn't get it anymore, like he grew out of it. I had that when I was young, and I grew out of it. When I was gonna say, my friend got COVID and his daughter got it, but his daughter never showed symptoms or anything. He got really sick. And she's like 9 or 10. But he says, no, dude, my daughter was just like nothing, like up and down, running around, whatever. He goes, I'm over here dying in the bed. I thought I was going to die. Isn't that, how is it that kids, they say kids are less susceptible or whatever. They can get it, but they can, how is it that kids can handle this disease better than adults? Why is it?
So there's a couple, things that scientists are looking at about why. And that also includes with like, the same thought. This is my thoughts on like, why I didn't get it, why my son didn't get it, why my husband did, is that there's new science that has shown that there are some people who have pre-existing immunity to the COVID-19 virus. Like they literally tested people, and they tested them and saw that they had antibodies which kind of help with infection that were not COVID-19 but kind of similar. And they also found that there's your immune system has like proteins that like, which are called antibodies, that help like put like a flag on the virus and say destroy. It's kind of like the destroy me signal, like you stake a flag and say like destroy this. And then there's some immunity cells that are fighters and killers, or helpers to help kill, and things like that. So these T cells, and what they found is that these T cells are actually active and ready to fight and the infection these people have never had the COVID-19, but it looks like they had other coronaviruses before, like similar ones. So like last year, I have actually not been sick for a year, almost a year and a half. Like no cold, no flu, no nothing. But I literally lost my voice, like ended up in speech therapy. It was like so bad last March because my son, who went to preschool, had this crazy cough, which they get everything when they're little, right? Like they go out there and they like get all the germs and then like bring it to you. And he got like a crazy cough and he gave it to me. And then I got like a crazy cough. Worst cough of my life. Like I never had a cough like that I recall. Like it was so bad. I went to like 3 ENTs to try and like figure me out, like why I can't get my voice back because it was like so damaging. And, you know, once that, my husband didn't really get it. It was just me and my son. Like my son gave it to me. And then, but now, you know, track around a whole year later, me and my son don't get this COVID-19, but my husband does.
That's crazy.
And it's very likely that what we had was some coronavirus, just like coronaviruses we have 4 of them that are constantly like around, just like the flu, just moving around. But for some reason, maybe it was a little bit rougher of a coronavirus for whatever reason. It could have, because it was so fresh in our systems, it could have given us some sort of immunity. It's kind of like having your lieutenants in the army, you know, ready to go. Like they're not, like they downsized the army, but like not fully, you know, because it's still been around, like it's still a recent attack. So kind of like that is what we're thinking, or at least seeing, is that there are people who somehow are immune, but they're trying to figure out why. And there seems to be that infections with other coronaviruses may have given them partial immunity, which is why some people may be more milder, as well as some people don't get it at all. So that is kind of like breaking science, and that's something that they're starting to do more research on right now.
I have a question. You know, you hear a lot of people, especially the conspiracy theorists, you know, they talk about how, like, I have a friend who will remain nameless. a guy, you know, I kind of respect, I kind of like him, you know. He's a cool guy. I've known him for years.
He's annoying.
But he kind of is, but he's adamant that Corona or COVID-19 was engineered. This was engineered. This was created in a lab and things like that. Is that possible? Can we
Bill Gates,
actually create? Okay, well, Bill Gates.
Can you create viruses that can, as bioterrorist weapons?
Is that possible?
You can, but it wasn't for COVID-19. But yes, you can. There is, I mean, part of the Department of Defense like funds money for scientists to like tackle like biowarfare. Kind of people remember when people were like sending out like anthrax and stuff?
Yeah.
Like that was biowarfare. Like, I mean, even though we already knew it was a bad virus, they were sending it out. Like it wasn't engineered to be bad. It was already bad. And
that's a virus?
That's a bacteria.
Oh.
That one was a bacteria, but it was like a bacteria that like forms spores. So it kind of like hibernates and forms like a little capsule, and then you breathe it in and then it like comes out. It's kind of like hatching out of a cocoon.
I remember when Fernando Fernando, I remember when you scared the hell out of me. We were talking about HIV or something. And you go, dude, there's something worse than that. I go, what? He goes, Hep C. Like, what the hell? He goes, you know that little blood that spills and it flakes up? Yeah, if you breathe that, you got it. I'm like, oh, dude. So then I would go into public restrooms or any public place, and if I saw like blood, I'm like, I'm bouncing.
Oh, heck no.
I go, I don't know who the hell's blood that is, but I ain't breathing that crap. You know, you scared the hell out of me. So
I will say you cannot breathe it in. Just, you know, you need blood contact. No, you need blood contact.
But I heard that didn't die though. That it didn't die.
It could take a while. It could take a while to die on surfaces, depending on the virus. It can last on the surface for hours. It can last for days. It just depends.
I remember Fernando, you scared the hell out of me, dude, for like years, bro. I was walking around, but now there's a cure for Hep C. I think they developed a cure or something.
Well, yeah, they did. They have a cure. It's expensive from what I understand. But look, I'm only drawing on what I was told and what I learned. Yeah. You know, as you know, I work in surgery, and so I got stuck with a needle. That was a Hep C positive patient.
Right, but that's blood to blood, so that's like that's into your blood because you got stuck with a needle. Yeah.
Right. Now, the fortunate thing about it is that it was not a hypodermic needle. It was an insufflation needle. It's the kind of needles that we use to insufflate the abdominal cavity when we're going to do a laparoscopic procedure. So it doesn't draw out blood. It blows CO2 into the abdominal cavity. So that was on my that was fortunate for me. you know, and the gauge of the needle, it's a thick gauge needle, you know, it's like a, I don't know, 14 gauge maybe, you know, 12 gauge needle, which is a thick needle. If you don't know your gauges, it's a thick needle. Just for comparison purposes, anytime you get an injection, most of the time when you get an injection, it's a 25 gauge needle. So the lower the number, the thicker the needle it is. So I got stuck with a thick needle.
So one gauge is like PVC pipe. It's bam, shove it in.
Pretty much. So one gauge, it's like a baseball bat, basically.
Just wham, cabrón.
Exactly. Right, exactly. So when I got stuck, you know, it was right in the palm of the hand, and the surgeon looks at me, and all he said was, "This guy is Hep C positive," and I'm like, "Oh, damn it!" You know what I mean? That was terrible. So they sent me down to the ER, and you know, there's a needle stick protocol, of course, that we have to follow and all that good stuff.
You wash your hands for like 5 days.
Yeah.
For weeks, for weeks you're getting flowers from the other staff.
Exactly, right? Well, see, so here's the funny thing. So we have a needle stick protocol, and when it's like HIV positive, for example, they give you Combivir, which is a medication that's a combination of several antiviral drugs to help combat the infection or to help stave off the infection. So hopefully you don't get it, right? But with Hep C, there was nothing at the time. At the time, there was no cure, you know, and basically they always drilled that on us. Hep C is 10,000 times more contagious than HIV. So you have to be careful. And every time somebody would come by, you know, with Hep C or a Hep C positive patient, they'd always tell us, "Hey, be careful, this guy's Hep C positive," right? The thing is, treat everybody as if they're Hep C positive or HIV positive. And then you're fine. You wear the PPE and you're great, you know, no problem. So when I got stuck with that needle, they sent me down to the ER right away, and they're like, "All right, well, you know, needle stick protocol." I get down there, the ER doctor, basically, you know, he asked me some interview questions about what happened, and I told him, you know, the source, we know that the source is Hep C positive, and all that stuff. So he kind of just, you know, he kind of shrugged his shoulders and patted me in the back, and he said, "Good luck." And that was it. You know, that was it. He's like, "Good luck." But I will say, he did give me, he said, just in case, he gave me Combivir. He prescribed Combivir. And as you know, Combivir is something that HIV positive patients take to combat the virus. So
that was like off prescription? Like before it was allowed?
He said, "Good luck to you and Tommy Lee."
Yeah, exactly, right? So he gave me the prescription, and he said, just, you know, go up and pick it up at the pharmacy. So I went up to the pharmacy to pick it up, and wouldn't you know it, the pharmacy tech was this girl that I had been flirting with back and forth, you know. We were talking, you know what I mean? We were flirting back and forth. And you know, there's a whole bunch.
Not a good time to ask you out, is it? Not a good time to ask you out.
That's kind of what happened, right? Because wouldn't you know it, you know, there's a whole bunch of pharmacy techs, right? And wouldn't you know it, I happened to get her. So she calls me up, and I come up, and I give her the prescription, and she looks at it, you know, Combivir. And then she looks at me, and I was like, "Oh, no. I'm not HIV positive." I'm like, "No, I got a needle stick. And she was like, "Right.
Yeah.
Okay." And then, you know, click on the computer, and then that was it.
That sucks.
You know,
Dude.
never again. So,
I remember I wrote a paper in college when I was studying at Cal State Long Beach. I had an anatomy physiology class, and a friend of mine came up HIV positive. And I remember I contacted a doctor from South Africa, because South Africa, I guess it was like a pandemic over there. Like people were popping up HIV positive left and right for a while. And I remember one of the last things, I remember him trying to sell me a product for my friend. I was like, I go, "Wait a minute, you know, I'm just doing a research paper, and I contacted you, and I wanted, you know, I was trying to understand how you handled it or whatever." And I remember he said, this is a thing I always kept in my head. So if I ever met anyone else who's HIV positive, by the way, that friend still lives. This is
That's awesome.
been like 20 years, man. Magic Johnson, I call him. But I remember the last thing he said, the most important thing is you keep his glutathione levels up. That was what he said. Because he said that was the thing, I guess that was the chemical in the cells that fought infections or something like that. I don't remember, but
it helps with there's something in your blood called free radicals, which are help with destroying things. I mean, those can also be part of.
So glutathione helps, but you can't. So then I had to do more research, and then I read that you can't take glutathione to have glutathione in your body. That glutathione was created by 3 amino acids that you consume, and it was I want to say it was the one that tryptophan or whatever from turkeys or whatever. It was that one. Yeah, it was cysteine.
Wow, so you remember your amino acids right there.
Yeah,
good.
Cysteine and cystic. Is there 2 different ones?
There's cysteine, there's tryptophan, and what was the other one?
I don't know.
Serine, maybe serine.
I don't remember if it started with a C as well, but I remember it was. I gotta look it up again. It was 3 of them, and if you took those, and that created your body made glutathione based on those 3 amino acids. So come to find out, if you took then I found. Check this out. So then I found this website because I read in an article that you could get those 3 amino acids in undenatured whey protein, which is whey protein that hasn't been processed, unlike these whey proteins that you buy in the stores. They're full of sugar and, for bulking up or whatever. So they don't heat this up as high to kill those amino acids, whereas these they do, the ones you buy, those commercial ones. So I found, and I still have the website to this day. I recommended it to a friend of my wife's. I said, look, man, I'm not a doctor. She got cancer. She got breast cancer. So I said, I don't know, man. Just tell her, recommend this undenatured whey protein. Dude, do you know that she started taking it and then it became like you couldn't detect her cancer anymore? And then she died. She ended up dying. She ended up passing away. She said she stopped taking it. She stopped taking the whey protein. And I said, it could have been other factors. We don't know, because it came back. She had it came back or so. So, but she started taking it. My friend, undetectable HIV for years. I mean, he's got the in vitro, whatever they take also.
The heart therapy.
Yeah, I told him, don't take any chances, bro, because we don't know if this is fact or whatever. I'm just basing it off what that guy told me. I would just take what they give you. And the
HIV drugs are really, really effective.
Yeah, nowadays.
They are really good.
You'll live
the crazy thing was when it first came out in the 80s when HIV hit, there was tons of people who needed the drug or needed something and they had nothing. And back then, there was laws where you couldn't give people stuff unless it was FDA approved. Yeah. And by then, all these people would have died. So they came up with this compassionate use law where untested drugs were allowed to be given to people for a last resort type of setting. Because they're going to die if you don't give them something, so might as well try. And the same thing happened with COVID. With some of these drugs, they did kind of this compassionate use where, people are on deathbed. So they're like, try this, before you couldn't try it. It had to be few trials. But now they let you if you're on death row.
But today or yesterday, they just approved plasma transfer to patients. If they're on their deathbed, they can give them plasma from patients who have recovered from COVID so that they have the antibodies, which is what I was tested for. I had a physical exam maybe 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, and I had no antibodies.
Yeah, me neither.
And I was
no antibodies. Kind of sad. I kind of wanted to be done.
Yeah, right? So was I. I was
it was mixed results. I mean, it was
but then some Chinese...
I don't wish COVID on myself, but I kind of already lived through it in my house, and I wish I could have just been done with it.
So I just read an article yesterday. Was it today? I don't remember. I don't remember things if they were today or yesterday, so forgive me. But I just read an article where this first Chinese guy reported to have it the second time. COVID.
Wow. Reinfection. Super rare. I will say it's not something that you should expect to happen often. I mean, I know COVID is kind of out of the box and the way it works in some cases, but there's been animal studies, there's been tons of people who have been infected and then they tested again. If you're looking at thousands upon people, and you have this one rare person, it's going to happen. You're going to have a rare person get reinfected again, just like some people will get like the chicken pox and then get it again. Like, how's that happening?
Yeah.
You know, it just happens, like, rarely. But yeah, I mean, it just shows that it can, for some people, reinfection can happen, which is, you know, unfortunate. But I wouldn't think it's going to be the norm until I see more of that. You know, 1 in a million chance or whatever, 100,000 chance is not that big.
Well, they spoke of the mutations, like you said earlier, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they were saying that, I was reading it, and they were saying, well, it's like in the article, it said, it's possible this guy got the American British version of the virus. I'm like, Jesus, we have versions. And then the second time he got the Asian European version of the virus. I'm like, wow, how many versions of this virus? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just coming out with all these versions.
Going back to like Fernando's question and kind of going into the versions, which was Fernando was asking, like, oh, could someone have manufactured viruses in the lab? They can. Did they manufacture COVID? No. They can see the versions. So it's kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like if you had like a typed paper and you had a written paper, and every time the virus replicates, it changes one letter in that typed page. So one word changes a little bit. And then the next time the virus replicates, another letter changes. So you can track, like, oh, it happened in, if it's the bat was here, like the bat was changed, and then here was changed, and then like the H changed to a T. And then you could track, like, kind of investigation, you could track where the changes happen. So you could see that the original COVID-19 virus came from bats. Like, you can see, or at least close, maybe there was another animal that it could have come from as well, but like in close association with bats. But it's basically that type of reservoir. And you could see the genetic sequence. You could see the little tiny DNA changes, which are just like one letter changes in the DNA sequence, and then you can track it. So every time the virus changes one letter every 2 weeks. So every month it changes by 2 letters, you know, in its genome. So you can track where the changes happen and then say, oh, and this, as it's split, and some of them came to the United States and other ones are in China, you can be like, oh, the Chinese ones had these, or Asian ones had these changes, you know, these changes in their DNA, and this one's had, the European ones had this one, because, you know, it's evolution, like things change over time. Genetic sequences change over time. The same thing will happen for the American. Now, if over time, if it gets too you know, it's not similar enough, yeah, you could get infected again if your immune system's weakened or not able to combat as easily as others. So I kind of like to think about it like, you know, if you have someone coming to your house, and if I was me, like if I was coming to your house and I'm an invader, I'm a virus, you know, you're going to be like, all right, well, how do I know this is Tracie? Okay, she got her, like, you know, her earrings that have like a little leaf shape. She's wearing a pink shirt, you know, she has a ponytail and like whatever, stuff like that, right? And so you kind of, you know how I look like. She's about 5'3", you know, whatever. And then I come back in, but I put a baseball hat on. Do you still recognize me? I come back in, I put glasses on. That's a mutation. Do you still recognize me? I come back in, I put a coat. Do you still recognize me? Yeah. After a while, I might have dyed my hair. I would have done, you know, different mascara or whatever, and changed my earrings, different shirt color, you know? Yeah. Do you still recognize me? After a while, you change so much that your immune system, the body doesn't know that was that. Now, if you get exposed to it, you could be like, oh yeah, I remember last time I saw it with the hat, and sometimes with the glasses. Like, you can kind of follow, but sometimes you can't. So eventually you won't recognize me anymore. And by then you will either get reinfected, or the vaccine will hopefully be updated every year, every 2-3 years, to identify the new Tracie versions out there. The one with the baseball hat, the one with the blonde hair, the one with the, you know, the crazy dress or whatever, you know, and star earrings or whatever. So that's kind of how it works. So if you look at like the person's, you know, there's a version of Tracie in Asia, there's a version of Tracie in United States, and there's a version of Tracie in Europe, you know, the European Tracie, you know, based on how I style myself. Some people could recognize all three, some people can't. Just depends on how good you are at identifying. Some immune systems are not that good, like they're a little harder for them to recognize.
So it says this guy just returned from a trip to Spain in mid-August, and it said the man had mild symptoms the first time, and none the second time.
Yep, asymptomatic.
And the reason they found out was because he got tested at the airport in Hong Kong, because he's from Hong Kong. That's crazy. It happens in Hong Kong. The guy who gets it twice. You know what I mean? Like, of all places.
Yeah, you're just like, you'll go into quarantine quick.
Couldn't have been in Michoacan or something, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean,
Trump will come out with something here.
And that's the thing, especially because you have asymptomatic, it's probably because your body fought most of it out.
Yeah.
Like there may be some, doesn't mean you won't be spreading it, but like severe infection and things like that is still promising in the sense of like, at least you're not going to die from this the second time around, if you do get it again.
I think those kids, man, too bad there's no testing, but you know when you're a little kid, there was those kids that like to eat dirt.
Yeah, it's good for you.
Like, I go, those kids probably don't catch shit, man. You know what I mean? Like, they probably don't get sick at all.
Also, one of the best things to have is an animal or a dog, bringing in all the dirt and grime and licking your face and like, exposing the kid to a bunch of stuff. You get less allergies.
I never ate dirt, dude.
Right, so back up.
I
was going to say, back up. She just said eating dirt is good for you, and you just kept talking. Wait, let's talk about eating dirt.
No, I get why.
Dirt good for you.
I get why she's saying that, because you're talking about dirt is what do you call it, is available to absorb whatever is in the atmosphere, dude. So if you're taking it, you're eating
pollen, other things.
Yeah, you're eating that shit. I mean, that's building your immune system from a young age. You know, it's like saying, it's like moms that've been exposed and give, you know, breast milk to their babies. So they pass on the, you know, the immunities, and the ones that don't, you know, don't. You're drinking,
keeping your kids in a sterile bubble.
Yeah, you don't get you don't get shit from Enfamil. You know, you don't get anything from that except your vitamins and minerals, but it's about it. You don't get immunity. But what were you gonna say, Fernando?
Right. So your advice to new parents is feed them dirt.
Let them play outside, let the dog lick them, let them lick the dog. I mean, actually, pets or cats, but dogs get more like I feel like they get a little more dirty. So
believe it or not,
that's gonna bring in stuff in and out of your house. You know, little like stuff that could it's gonna keep allergies lower than what they could have been for your children, and give them better immunity.
Believe it or not, I think that's what helped my son, because we're talking about him having asthma before. I remember he pet a dog once and started getting all these freaking hives all over his body, dude.
He was getting allergic to the dog?
Yeah. So we're in Tijuana, and he pet a dog, and I'm like, so we rushed to the pharmacy. I just got an antihistamine. He took it, in about 30 minutes, boom, they were gone. He took a shower, took the antihistamine, they were gone. You know, thank God. Because, I mean, you know, you were, as a parent, you're like, oh, shoot, what if his trachea or whatever starts, or what is it? Yeah, trachea, right?
Anaphylactic shock.
Starts to swell up, and then he can't breathe. We're not going to wait till then.
Especially in Mexico. You were like, I need to be in the United States to find my hospital.
You know, but, you know, it's interesting because Mexico has a lot of cutting edge medicine, man. That
I'm sure.
I know doctors.
You got to know where to go, though.
Like exactly.
You don't know where you're at. You're like, oh gosh, where do I go?
Fortunately, we have a family friend that's a doctor, and dude, he's really good. Like he's on it. Like, he'll tell you this, and that. And I mean, he helps my mother-in-law. She lives out there, and you know, she got COVID. He's a 72-year-old lady, and she was all worried. She was all worried because she's like, she has to watch herself. Like she got diagnosed with diabetes, but she doesn't have to take. She can control it with her diet. So she's like, you know, she's vulnerable to being diabetic, but she tested positive, but now she's not positive, right? Because she started controlling it with diet and stuff like. She's a very active woman, 72-year-old, but she dances at the parties. She walks a lot, and I told her, I said, and so when she got it, she started crying. I'm like, look, nothing's gonna happen to you. Doesn't matter what you say, what you heard about people who are older. Nothing's gonna happen to you. You're a very active one. You eat well when you want to. It's not like to her, eating well is not like, she doesn't look at it like, oh, I gotta eat vegetables, you know. To her, she's that kind of person. She'll have fruits, vegetables, you know. She'll eat right. She doesn't eat a lot of red meat, you know. So she's that person. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I got it, I gotta worry. She
is like a healthy eater.
Because burgers and pizza are that's my kryptonite, bro. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, dude, when you drive by it, I haven't tried that burger place. Like, every time, like, Slater's 50-50. I've never tried Slater's 50-50. Or
have you still not tried Slater's 50-50?
I have not. Is it good?
You've never been to? Oh, dude.
Where's this place at?
Great. Okay, so
there's a couple of them. Orange County.
Yeah,
and
there's one in Anaheim Hills, right? Orange County.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know if there's still
There's
one in
Huntington
Pasadena,
Beach.
but
There's one in Huntington Beach. I know there's one in
Huntington Beach. That's right. And
Next
so
time I'll
basically,
visit, I'll have to go.
yes, Slater's 50-50. What they do is that they mix bacon, 50% bacon with 50% beef, and everything they do. All hamburger patties.
So my husband's gonna really like this place then.
Oh yeah, it's great. And they have bacon infused ketchup, bacon infused mayonnaise. They even have bacon flavored soda.
Oh no!
Oh, that's too much for me right there.
No,
I can't even drink soda anymore, dude. Like I can't even drink regular soda anymore. It's too. I don't like things that are too sweet.
Either.
The sugar.
Unless it's a mojito or margarita with some some bubbly in there, not soda. Yeah.
I'm a straight liquor fan, man.
I hate soda.
Hey, dude. Donald Trump drinks 10 Diet Cokes a day, and
Coke Zero.
Yeah, but he drinks 10 Diet Cokes a day, and that guy doesn't look like he's gonna fall over anytime soon. Maybe because everybody wants him to, so it's not gonna happen. Warren Buffett's been drinking Coke. He's like 80-something years old, and he's been drinking Coca-Cola for years because he's invested in Coca-Cola. That's the way he gets it out there. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just. I think it's the
random. Depends on people. Yeah.
I think your physiology is just the luck of the draw, man. Like you got it. It's like these people who are. What do you call that thing? I'm sorry, man. I get brain farts. The people who can't eat wheat. What is
gluten?
Yeah, gluten. It's like the
gluten
people
intolerant. Yeah.
Yeah, who can't.
Celiac disease.
Yeah, we might be gluten intolerant. We might be, you get gassy or something like that. Dude, my friend found out. A friend of mine that liked to smoke on the Magic Dragon over there. He found out years after years of smoking medical marijuana and stuff. He found out he was allergic to marijuana.
What?
I didn't know this, but he said he would throw up every time he smoked. I go, why would you smoke? He goes, because to get over the nausea. I'm like, what? That's what was causing the nausea, dude. I go, so after years, so he quit smoking and it's all gone. So, but he found out he had celiac disease. So he had used so, but marijuana was provoking. I don't know. Maybe I go, dude. Maybe you're smoking pot, then you got the munchies, and you just eat anything and so many products have weed in it for thickening. For thickening, they put gluten in it for thick. I don't have that problem. I can have gluten. I know. I've never broken out. I've never felt nauseous or anything like that. So I don't know. Right. I mean, I think I'd be skinnier.
It's pretty rare. I think people sometimes overhype how. With the gluten-free craze and
it's like peanuts.
And you can also make yourself intolerant to things. Like you might have heard people who start becoming lactose intolerant because they stop drinking milk. And they're trying to like cut dairy and then they drink it again and they're like, oh, this is making me feel bad. It's because your body like adjusted. Because if you don't need it, well, your body's not going to make the tools to break it down, right? It's a waste of energy.
Well,
so if you're going to cut something from your diet, like milk and things or gluten and other things, your body's going to stop processing it that easy. You have to hopefully if it works out, build it back up again.
So is it true that we're not made to drink a cow's milk?
Well, we're made to drink milk from, breastfeeding and things like that, human milk. But we've through evolution have adapted to have the tools, the enzymes to break down milk, like dairy farmers and stuff like that. You could see genetically because that was important, right? So if having those tools to break down dairy is important, your human race will adapt and keep it and make it more popular for people who need that as a primary food source. So like dairy farmers and everything like that who had a lot of dairy as part of their diet, they have high milk tolerance. Like they don't really become, lactose intolerant. But you see other cultures where they don't really drink milk, they have more lactose intolerance genetically through their bloodlines. So it just depends on that. But you can lose it if you don't use it in some cases. Like it can gradually go away.
That's what, it's funny because my wife says, sorry, Fernando, let me just get this. My wife says she's lactose intolerant. And then, but that's because she doesn't like milk. So she doesn't have milk. I think she doesn't like the taste. Some people don't like the taste. I love the taste of milk, man.
I love milk. I used to drink milk every day.
dude.
You basically
like,
still do every day.
like at night, I would have a large glass of cold milk. Oh my God, it was like the best, dude. Like I just down it. It's just, but there's certain types of milk, you know, like you get different flavors of milk. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and
Depends on the cow and the nutrition of the cow. And
there's one we buy, like it's an organic milk from Smart and Final. Dude, that milk tastes like the milk. It tastes like the way milk tasted in the 80s. Like milk somehow changed flavor over time. Like it just, you know what I mean? Like, you know, remember you used to see pasteurized or homogenized, and you would, you know, there's some people who have raw milk. I mean, there's always the point of you could get an infection. In Mexico, man.
But, you know, you take your chance, or maybe your gut has developed immunity. That's when you go to Mexico and you eat the food there. Like if people have not been exposed to the food there or had that in there, that they sometimes have stomach aches and things because your body has not been used to processing that. But then once you do, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course, white Americans that say, "Oh, it's because of dirty." No, dude, it's because your body's not accustomed to it.
No, it's not accostomed to it. No.
Yeah.
So to breaking down that type of food, incling beans and
even us, we're not accustomed to it. We go over there. Oh man, I got diarrhea or whatever. I got the runs.
It was worth it.
Yeah, but it's exactly. Yeah, hell, dude, have you ever had fresh milk? You ever had fresh milk from the cow? Like my mom was from a rancho, and my mom is from a rancho. I mean, you know, she's been here for like 40 years, or longer. And then I remember we went to her town years ago. I was a little kid, and I remember having the milk straight from the cow. It wasn't bad, dude. It didn't taste too bad. I remember it being a little warm. I mean, I don't know if now I'd like it as much, but as a kid, I was like, "Ooh, this is good."
Just put a little bit of like chocolate milk in there, and then you'd be like, "Oh, hot chocolate."
Chocolate barra.
When I was a kid, when I was a kid, I remember going to Mexico, and you know, my aunt, she milked a cow. You know, she had like this little bucket, and my cousins were all excited. You know, and I guess the top of it, if you don't stir it, it starts to
La nata. It's called la nata, the curd.
La nata, right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I remember my cousin just picking it right off the top of the bucket and just eating it. And I was like, oh man. And he's like, you should drink some fresh milk. You should drink it. And when I was a kid, I was like maybe 7, you know. And I remember thinking, yeah, sure. You know, I love milk. So they poured it in a little cup and they gave it to me. And I almost threw up because I expected it to be cold for whatever reason. I expected it to be cold, like from the refrigerator, and it was hot. You know, and I was like, "Oh, this is disgusting! It tastes nothing like milk." And they're like, "No, stupid! This is what milk actually tastes like. It's just that the milk that you get from the store has been pasteurized and all that other stuff."
Well, it's funny, when we were a baby, we liked that warm milk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, my son, like when I would pump breast milk when I was at work and stuff and give him the cold milk, he was not having it. We needed to warm up that milk. You know, he was not going to have that cold milk.
Why is it that cow's milk gets a bad rap, but then they say, oh, you should have goat's milk instead? What makes a cow's milk so lactose filled and a goat's milk not? You know what I'm saying? So they're saying if you're lactose intolerant, you can drink goat's milk. Like that's an interesting thing, you know what I mean? Like how different animals create different, you know. I'm curious. I'm curious to know that. Like why goats are ugly too, man? You know what I mean? Like, like it can't be the look of the animal, right?
I mean, I think it's why we have more cow milk. It's just because cows produce more.
Yeah, there's more of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
hold a lot more.
So how bad, like I know you're a virologist, but I'm sure you know a lot more than I do. I don't, Fernando's pretty damn smart too, man. How bad are the chemicals in like canned foods and all that stuff for people? Like, I mean, we don't, like I try to look at stuff and say, if I don't know what the hell this shit is, I ain't eating it. Like when you start saying what's that, xanthan gum and all that, I'm like, I've never tried that brand, you know what I mean? Like I've had Wrigley's. If it said Wrigley's, okay, I've had Wrigley's, but xanthan, no, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like when you start reading all these ingredients, do you know what they are? Like Just a quick question.
No, really, not all of them. I mean, I know a lot of them are preservatives because you need them to last long.
Yeah.
Usually canned food doesn't have as much preservatives as
Box
other
food.
foods because it's canned, so it keeps it sterile. The reason you have preservatives is one, to prevent food rot, but the second thing is you also want to prevent bacteria from growing. So all canned food should be should be cooked and like thoroughly heated before you put it in the can to prevent any bacterial infection. And then when something's wrong when you see there's like, I don't know if you've ever seen a can pop. But that means it has like botulism. Like it has the bacteria that can cause botulism, which is really bad. It's kind of like the same bacteria that they use to give like Botox shots, like, tetanus, things like the very same family.
Yeah.
So like, you want to prevent bacteria from being inside the canned food. But, for me, I like, I don't really like to do too much canned food, and I like to look at the ingredients. Like I want to see, if I'm buying spaghetti sauce, that it's mainly tomatoes, and like, not as much other stuff in there. I would tell my students that like when I buy stuff at the grocery store, I try and read like baked goods have a lot of preservatives. So I try and like keep it fresh, like it's going to go bad quicker. But like I'd rather have good stuff. I'll check like, does it have eggs, bread, none of the high fructose corn syrup stuff, because that's not so good for you. A lot of trans fats are still in the market, but they're kind of hidden. So if you ever see the word partially hydrogenated oil, that's a trans fat. In almost every store I go to, like if it's not like Whole Foods or some sort of like health food store, like they have trans fat in it. So, those are, things that I watch for. I mean, technically things that they give us are safe to be able to be sold, but it may not be good for your health, in the long run. Just like, I mean, I'll still eat my Cheetos, but I know it's not good for me, but there's, maybe if I can cut some preservatives, it can like make up for some of the other not so good health decisions.
What's interesting is I had a friend tell me once, and it makes a lot of sense. The Mexican diet is actually a pretty healthy diet if you stick to the traditional Mexican diet, where everyth's made from scratch. You know what I mean? Like your chicken, you kill your own chicken. I'm just kidding.
Oh man, I don't know if I can do that.
Grab it by the neck and spin it around. It's funny when you see the old lady que le vale, she just grabs it. Hey, vente pa acá, and then they have a name for it. Vente pa acá, Sarita, and then just going, just spin it around, and that's it. Bye, Sarita. The caldo de pollo tonight. You know what I mean? Like, but it makes a lot of sense because you talk about cilantro, some onion, I mean, if you don't stay away from the tripas and what else, the kidney or whatever, if you stay away from that stuff, but
garlic is good for you too.
Yeah, garlic, and there's a lot of garlic. Yeah. Dude, when this whole thing started, man, I was doing lemon garlic tea, and that's what I was drinking, because I heard that if you drank hot liquids, that would kill a virus. I mean, I didn't care if it was true or not. I'm like, it made me sleep okay at night. You know what I mean?
It made you feel better.
And the garlic, I mean, I knew the garlic was good for me. So I would just boil the water, squeeze some lemon in it, throw like a clove of what you call garlic, and then blend it. And my son, which is, kids are fussy, he would down it. I'm like, so you like it? I'm like, he's like, it doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? Like me, like, they put some honey in it. I'm like, I'm not putting honey in it, even though honey is supposed to have some good stuff in it. Some antioxidants.
Yeah, it does have some good stuff.
So is honey a better substitute for sugar? Like, I mean, because they say honey is still sweet, so it has sugar in it. But what's the benefits?
Your body processes it a little bit differently. So the way that the sugar is made is a little bit different, and actually, it's different based off of like if you eat it, like how sweet it tastes.
Yeah.
Depending on if it's in hot liquid versus cold. I don't know if you ever put, like, if you put the same amount of honey in a cold glass, it's gonna taste so much sweeter than when you put it in a warm glass, because the sugar like changes its composition a little bit, so you can taste it more sweeter in cold than hot. But honey has a lot of like antibacterial properties as well.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't help with viruses, but it definitely can help with inflammation, which can also be part of just like your symptoms, to manage symptoms. If you have a sore throat, with little kids, you can't give them cough syrup, but you can give them honey, and that helps them to manage their cough a little bit better. So,
are you into the whole natural remedy stuff? Do you believe in any of it? Like this whole earthing thing? Have you heard of that now?
So I'm not like super into like that. I mean, I follow like science, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of natural stuff out there that from what I can see scientific evidence for. So I mean, I might try something and it might not be scientific because I don't really know if it's really going to help or not. But my brain, you know, like you have to do what's best
Yeah.
for you. Like if I see the scientific evidence that says this, I'll be like, I'm gonna believe, I'm sold, and I'm gonna
Okay.
feel better about myself. And so there is like definitely some things that are natural that I prefer to do compared to like medicines if there's natural alternatives for it.
So
Like, you know,
earthing is this thing that I don't know how new it is, but it says you go out and you sit in your grass, you put your feet down and your hands down, and you stay there, and and supposedly reduces inflammation in your body because you're touching the earth. Something about the earth's energy and whatnot. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I had like in my right heel, I had what do you call it? What's that shit called where the tendon down there swells up?
Plantar fasciitis.
Plantar fasciitis. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I had plantar fasciitis, and I was running around with my son. I went to the park. I ran around barefoot. We're throwing the football and stuff. Next day, 2 days later, I realized, you know what? My heel doesn't hurt anymore. And dude, and it had been hurting me for a year. A year. I tried everything. I tried icing it. I tried Epsom salt and hot water. I tried. That got rid of it. Just being barefoot in the park. So then I was like, wait a minute, man. There's got to be something to this earthing thing. There got to be something with the energy. I believe in energies. I believe I really believe in energies because ever since I started reading up on Nikola Tesla and all that, and how he said, I mean, he was talking about cell phones over 100 years ago about using the energies in the earth, the free energy in the earth, to make phone calls and communicate and send signals. I mean, this is when Edison was like, screw that guy, he's crazy. And then they were doing all his, they were doing his AC tests, alternating current tests on elephants and killing them just to prove that Tesla was crazy. But everything that all these cell phone companies and all these other companies are using is science that Tesla created years ago, dude. And they're benefiting, they're making the money off of it. Dude died poor. So I believe in kind of this stuff. We used to go to this, and like, well, you're a scientist, so I don't think you I don't think you already have a contrary opinion. I don't know, but we used to go to this chiropractor, right? And they get a
my
bad.
husband's a chiropractor.
So chiropractors get a bad rap, right? Like they're not recognized by the medical association and this and that.
Yeah, he has a hard time sometimes just trying to. Be respected.
Yeah, I love chiropractors, and my wife used to go to this chiropractor that was, I believe that guy was the shit, for lack of a better term, dude. That guy, he told us, he used to tell us, get enough sun, eat healthy, and move. You do those 3 things, you'll be healthy. You won't get sick. You'll keep your immune system levels up. He goes, if one of them's lacking, you're going to get, your immune system becomes a little more susceptible. And he goes, he's the one that told us viruses are around us 24/7. He goes, there's no such thing as there's a virus right now. No, the viruses are around us 24/7. It just depends on your immune system levels, or if you're going to get it or not. He goes, and when when your immune system drops, boom, you get sick. That's what he told.
Well, see, I tell my students when I teach a class, and like some, especially non-majors, when they don't know a lot, they don't have a lot of science background, I tell them, like, you can kind of what you just said, you don't want to be lacking in vitamins.
Yeah.
If you take too much of it, you're just going to pee it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if your body's lacking it, like I'm a big proponent, like if, as long as if you're vitamin deficient, like your vitamin C pills or whatever you're going to take it, get all your vitamins C you can get. You're not going to become a superpower, like, afterwards. You're not going to be Superman afterwards, but you're going to be at your 100% and the best your body can do by eating healthy, exercising.
Or as healthy as possible.
As healthy as you can, or to take your vitamins, or, to keep everything up to par. So your body can make its, fight its best battle that it can.
Dude, my friend of mine, she's from the, go ahead, Fernie, go ahead. Because I know you were waiting.
No, I was going to touch on, before, I know we're running out of time, but let's talk about vaccines. That's something we haven't really touched on, which I think is also a very important thing and a lot of people are very curious about. So earlier we were talking about this law. I forgot what the law was, where you gave it a name, where they were a compassionate law, you know, where people are dying.
Like compassionate use. Yeah.
Compassionate use law, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we hear that Russia has a vaccine for COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, everyone I talk to, including medical professionals, they'll tell, you know, at the hospital, they'll tell me, you know what, I'm going to wait for round 2. I'm not going to take the Russian vaccine. You know, I'm going to wait until after, you know, and then you heard people here when they talk about the Russian vaccine saying, well, it hasn't gone through step 3, but they don't explain what step 3 is. So what is step 3? You know, what's the process that these vaccines have to go through before they have to be approved or we know they work and that they're safe?
Before you answer, I just want to say, from the movie Outbreak, I thought they just needed a sample of the disease, and then they created a vaccine just like that.
I know, it happened instantaneous, right? You're just
remember,
like, seriously, that doesn't happen real life. I
remember the movie
that.
Outbreak?
Yeah.
Oh,
and there was one that came out, like Contagion, that came out like maybe 10 years ago too, and you're just like, wow, they just like made the antidote and like give a vaccine and like instantaneous. Yeah, it doesn't happen that fast, unfortunately. Yeah, so basically whenever you want it, for example, like the COVID-19 vaccine, typically first you're trying to make sure that the vaccine is not harmful or toxic. So you get like a small amount of people and you give them particular doses and you see which one's not harmful, and also see if it has some sort of effect in the sense of creating antibodies. Like, is it productive enough to make antibodies to make you immune? So very small, mainly trying to test for side effects. Is it toxic? We're going to hurt you. And maybe it works. We're going to see that as well. If that works, that's usually in like, you know, like small groups, less than 100. Then they move on to phase 2. Phase 2 is now trying to see, like, we know kind of the common side effects, but we have to test it in a bigger population. Kind of like the smaller population is like, okay, if something goes wrong, like at least it only happened to a couple people, you know. Now that you show that it's safe, you know, or likely safe, now you move on bigger, because, you know, it could be different. Like certain ethnicities and populations may react differently to the vaccine. So you want to be sure it's representative, has males and females of different types of bodies and ethnicities, types and ages. And then you test that, and you're testing the same thing, but now you've narrowed down like which dose of the vaccine to use, because you've figured that out in phase 1, and you start testing more again. What are your side effects? Is it working? And then once that's more, a couple hundred, less than 1,000. And then you move on to phase 3, which is like, we show it works. We show it's like at least works in a smaller scale. We show it's safe. Now we have to prove what we just showed in a bigger scale. So phase 3 is really just doing it, but also you have to have controls, which mean there's going to be some people who don't get the vaccine and you don't know that. So you go in, they give you a shot, and they don't tell you if you actually got the vaccine or not.
Oh, okay.
So there's kind of the
placebo, basically.
Placebo, exactly. Right. So then you don't know if you got the vaccine or not, and then they monitor you for the next. And usually the vaccine for phase 3 is given to people who are more high risk, because they're like maybe healthcare workers, or they're going to be higher exposure to the virus. And then they're going to monitor, okay, from the people who got the placebo, who got infected, you know, 70% or whatever. From the people who had the vaccine, how many got infected? Hopefully 0%, you know. And then they use that data and say it works. Not only is it safe, safety's already been shown, so that's done, but is it working? Does that make sense? So like that's phase 3.
Yes.
So if you were to go on for the clinical trials, you know, and you want to wait for and go on for phase 3, you should be safe, because most of the safety stuff has already been done. That was the other phases. But now it's like, will this actually help me? And really, again, you don't even know if you got the vaccine or not.
True.
So it just depends on that. So that's all they're testing for. And then once that happens, which could take, they're fast tracking it. So I think they'll know the results by January. Then they can start they can get approved and move on to people and vaccinate people.
Wow.
And they monitor for about 10 years or 5 to 10 years. That's phase 4. It's like long term. But normally there's not too crazy stuff happening during that time.
For a while there, I had friends who were convincing me, you know, the anti-vaccine theorist. Like, oh no, they're killing people. Their kids are being born with autism because of the vaccines and all. And then, you know, for a while I was buying into it, man. I was just like, and then my friend was like, man, that's stupid. He goes, you know how many people would have polio if we didn't have a vaccine?
Mm-hmm.
You know how many people would have
Yep.
smallpox if we didn't have a vaccine? And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's common sense, man. Like,
And then people say, oh, I'm fine. I don't get vaccinated. I'm fine. It's because enough people got vaccinated that they're protecting you too.
and then
You're living off of herd immunity rationale, actually.
And then I started to think, like, I think that the people who started these conspiracy theories are people who unfortunately had children who probably were born with autism or something, and they were looking for somebody to blame, like, oh man, it's that damn vaccine. And I can empathize with people. I mean, when if you have a kid and it's born a little different or whatever, you want to know why. You want to believe it's not you or the other parent. You want to, there had to be some kind of outside influence. And so, I got that. And then I started, and I saw that a lot of people I read online that were, anti-vaccine were people who had kids, children, or family members with, issues. So that I started believing in the vaccine. I mean, but, I did read that vaccines, the amount of vaccines we receive has like tripled since we were kids. But then again, so have diseases, right?
Well, if we also think about how many foreign substances do little kids get exposed to when they're playing in the dirt? Hundreds to thousands a day. Changing from a couple dozen vaccines to maybe 20 vaccines over the course of a childhood, compared to hundreds to thousands a day when you're a little kid and starting out. I mean, that's one of the things I say. Like, so if you research, you can find maybe a couple of professionals who are on the side of anti-vaccine, and then you have professionals who are on the side of vaccines. It's one of those things that we spoke about earlier. So, like, they both give you their pros and cons, but then I just had to, I think what convinced me was just thinking, like, saying, you know what, when I started reading, like, well, I have this, I have a nephew, or I have a kid, I go, okay, that's where it's coming from. Because you didn't have anybody on there saying, well, my neighbor, you know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying? Like, nobody was on there saying, it's like they say, we don't care until it affects us, right? So I'm sure, so I empathize with those parents, because I'm pretty sure that if one of my kids was born, like one of my kids has a hand biting problem. He bites his hand, and I've realized that he does that to comfort himself. And he does this when he gets excited. And nobody can, I mean, he's been a doctor, he's been a specialist, and it's his way of dealing with like anxiety when he gets excited or whatever. And hopefully he grow out of it. And if he doesn't, he's gonna scare the hell out of the first woman who gets naked in front of him, because she's gonna be like, "Why are you biting your hand?" His first sexual experience, like, "Oh, this is better than I thought." Oh, you know what I mean? Like, I tell him, and he's 11, but I told him, I said, you can't, you gotta slow that down now. I go, because what if there's a girl you like and you do this in front of her, you're gonna freak her out. She's gonna think you want to, like, just tear her apart or something. I tell him, like, what I'm saying, not just to give her a kiss or something like that. He's like, oh well, and his reply is, my son's, these kids today, man, they're just so far advanced than we are. He's like, well, if she can't accept me for who I am, then maybe she's not the right one. That's what he told me. 11 years old. That's good. That's good.
That's exactly what he told me. I was like, God dang it. You gotta shut me. You always gotta shut me up, don't you? Like, dude, that guy reminds me of me when I was a kid. I knew everything. Like, I had any subject I bring up, he knows something. I'm just like, Jesus, there's something you don't know. Like, oh, he corrects my older son who hates it. Hates that he corrects him. Like, just let me be wrong, like, it's just interesting. Were you like that, Fernando, as a kid? You strike me as being kind of like that. Like, were you just, like, I used to know every Dodger, and I knew what high school they played at. I knew what college they went to. I knew what round we drafted in them. I knew a bunch of stupid things, like, things that are worthless to me now,
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, the funny thing is that I wasn't like that as a child, but as I've grown into an adult, one of my pet peeves is people who use incorrect grammar, especially like on social media.
Oh,
I'm one of those
yeah.
grammar Nazis, right? People point that out. You know, that like grammar Nazis.
I hate that.
Mhm.
I hate that whole
But
capital
yes.
letter, small letter, capital letter. Like
Mhm.
yeah.
Raza does that a lot. Like Mexicanos, they like, or in Spanish when they write K-E. Oh, it bugs me. Que hubo and all.
There's
Oh,
like
come
the
on.
slang. There's like the slang version of
Studio.
grammar.
Yeah, but I don't. It bugs me. I have a pet peeve too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have another question regarding vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is something that a lot of Mexican people can relate to. If you, and I know you probably can answer this question way better. You probably have one, but you've seen those people who have a scar
Mm-hmm.
on their arm.
Yep.
You know,
TB?
it looks like an asteroid impact.
Yep.
On their arm. What vaccine is that?
It's the Mexican polio vaccine.
Oh, it's polio. Oh, that was TB.
So
Oh,
they
it
used
was,
to
man.
have a different. They used to have. My mom had it. Like I would see it. Like it's the people of a certain generation and
They still do. No, they still do.
They still do it.
Some
They
people
still have that.
yes,
Yeah,
some
they
people
still
do
have
it.
Yes.
Yeah, there's different types of polio vaccines. And so that was one of them. One of the versions was kind of, I mean, I don't know how it made the whole. I think it was actually, if I remember correctly now, it might have just been part of the effect of like, I think it was like a live mutated version of polio. So it wouldn't cause, so like some vaccines are live viruses, some of them are like killed.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But I think that one might have been alive. Don't quote me on that. But if I remember correctly, that was part of why it formed that little hole or circle on their arm. But the American version of the polio vaccine doesn't do that.
So, Dr. Delgado, you saying by January we have a vaccine?
We have a vaccine. I mean, we have a vaccine happening now, like in phase 3, and it's in fast track. I mean, it just depends on how fast these people get infected. You know, if they really are like, you know, in high risk categories of whatever their job is or whatever it is that they can get infected, then we can get the data faster to see who got infected and who didn't, and then move on and approve.
Well, I find out.
I think January, like that's the plan. Like Dr. Fauci, when he was allowed to speak, was able to talk about that a little bit. And he's optimistic that January will have results for that, which then is how fast can we get the turnaround to start giving the vaccine? Who gets it first? Is it the people who have more high risk or people in healthcare?
More money.
You know, exactly. You know, how's that going to work? I know like it's different now because they're manufacturing the vaccine now like it's going to go out in January or February. And if it doesn't work out, it just gets destroyed. You know? So they're spending tons of money to make sure that, you know, because it could take a year to manufacture stuff for enough for everybody. But if you're manufacturing it like ahead of time, hoping that it works out, it's great. And there are many vaccines that are coming out that are in phase 3 now. So there may be multiple that are out there.
I was going to say that because I'm in, you know, I follow the stock market in the stock. So I've been keeping an eye on the companies like Moderna,
Mm-hmm.
Johnson & Johnson.
Yep.
And then this one called GlaxoSmithKline. That's they're a pharmaceutical company, and all of them have quote unquote a vaccine phase 3.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that some of these, you know, it's crazy, Fernando. There's a Chinese vaccine and it's being sent to Mexico to be tested. And I'm like, why do they choose Mexico? Like that. And why does Mexico accept? We're like, no, sí, mándalo, cabrón, acá. You know,
well, maybe they're like,
Colombia's another country just got chosen to try a vaccine. So it's like, yeah, but those another couple other companies, but yeah, Moderna, J&J, and this GlaxoSmithKline. Those are the 3 companies that I know. GlaxoSmithKline actually is far along than anybody. Just they're the ones that are furthest along. I think they were in phase 3 before anybody else. So yeah, I pray. I'm a high school football coach. I do comedy. We do this podcast. We're doing the. I got into the stock market when this whole thing started because I said, you know what, I got to find something to generate some income. Yeah. Hey, dude, this is. I lost some money. I was in the hole. I won't tell you how much, but now I'm positive by. I almost flipped it at 180, and it's like just learning. You know, I taught myself, and I said, you know, I got to get good at this because I don't want a 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying? Like I gotta get at the stock stuff. And I there's a lot of things that so I watch videos to learn, but they teach you to lose, man. These guys are just, if you follow what they teach you, you're like, for a while there I was like, ooh, what's that company? Oh, let me put some money into that. Ooh, what's that company? Screw that. I just said, let's stick with the winners. Apple never does bad. Microsoft never does bad. Google never does bad. You're talking about all these tech companies. Apple's never going to go broke. Tesla is just blowing people out of the water. Yep. Everybody wants a Tesla. They're building these 3 giga factories in Texas, China, and one more. I want to say Germany. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I know it's in Europe somewhere. This guy's building I don't know if you heard, but you hear about Tesla? Elon Musk has a company where he's building this chip that they're going to dig a hole in your brain.
Oh, right. We discussed that the last podcast.
And they're going to put that chip in your head, and then it connects to your synapses or something like that, and it makes blind people see, and it makes quadriplegic people walk and move their arms and move their limbs. Dude, that is some scary stuff. Yeah.
It's like sci-fi in real life.
It can fix renal failure. It can fix. So I'm like, how do you die?
I mean, the world is endless, with possibilities.
But obviously it's going to be for those who can afford it, correct? Am I correct? It's not going to be like, my tia Maria, if she's got diabetes, that's the way she's going to go out.
Yeah, but also the longer you live, the more chance of getting cancer. So we're back to them.
Yeah. But I don't know what the electricity or the synapses has to do with cancer. I don't know.
Or just living longer. If you live, if there is things that let you live longer eventually.
And that's I tell people, you want to live longer. All your friends your age are gonna die, and you're gonna be this old dude hanging out with young people. And nobody wants you around, man. Nobody wants you around. I don't want my great granduncle hanging out with me when I'm with my friends or whatever. I love you, Theo, but you gotta go, man. It's your time. Sadly, exactly. Right? No, I'm just being facetious, but I'm just saying, but that's an interesting thing, man. To give quadriplegic people hope,
definitely,
and or blind people or deaf people, and just when I saw that when he was talking about it, I was like, whoa! It just blew me away. So be on the lookout for that. But that's something to put some money into.
Yeah, let's hope, right? That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Delgado. I want to say that, and thank you, Fernando, for inviting her. And
no problem.
I hope you come back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I hope you come back when we get.
Welcome.
Hope you come back. Even if there's no vaccine, or hopefully we're not talking about the same thing. 6 months from now, hey man, there's one in phase 8 now.
Oh gosh.
The phase 8 is when the other 5 failed. Now
right. Exactly.
No, there's some promising data out there. I'm pretty optimistic.
Awesome. That's good news.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
So if you want to say anything, Fernando?
No, I just want to thank you, Dr. Delgado, for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us. It's very informative. I enjoyed listening to a lot of things that you said. I'm sure that our listeners are going to be very excited to hear about a lot of things that you said. So thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully, like Cisco said, we'll have you on again in the future.
Yeah.
And maybe next time we'll talk about
sexually transmitted disease. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much we could talk about herpes. Herpes is forever. Yeah.
And so why don't we have herd immunity to herpes?
Yeah.
Some vaccines are harder to make than others. And herpes virus vaccines are difficult. They travel different cell types. They go from your skin or cells to your neuron cells, and it gets complicated. We could talk about that next time.
Yeah, let's talk about it next time.